Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the heart of New Horizon, a sprawling metropolis full of glistening skyscrapers and dark alleyways, something dark had taken root beneath the surface. Bruce Banner felt the familiar thrum of unease settle in his gut as he surveyed the city from a rooftop. His Geiger counter ticked softly, a reminder that the reason he was here was far more dangerous than any simple urban crime. There was gamma radiation in the air, subtle but unmistakable. Bruce had been tracking the spike in radiation for weeks, his search bringing him closer to New Horizon. But this wasn't just about gamma. Reports of strange incidents, people exhibiting unusual strength, agility, and violent tendencies had surfaced in the past month. The stories pointed to something beyond ordinary criminal activity, something linked to his past. If he could stop it before it spiraled out of control, maybe he could prevent another tragedy. His eyes narrowed, scanning the city. Somewhere down there, a new weapon was being born. Unbeknownst to him, Peter Parker, New Horizon, a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, was swinging through the same streets with a growing sense of dread. He'd have felt too something was wrong, terribly wrong. He'd noticed the changes in the city before anyone else, the unusual uptick in crime, the strange behavior of some of its citizens. People were disappearing, others were reappearing with powers far too similar to his own. Except they weren't acting like heroes, they were lashing out, causing chaos. Peter had been following a lead for days, and it had taken him to a rundown section of the city. His web line snapped tight as he perched on a streetlight, watching a group of thugs loading crates into an armored truck. They weren't your average street-level criminals. These guys were professionals outfitted with high-tech gear and moving like soldiers. Peter's spider sense tingled, and his eyes locked on a single man in a dark suit overseeing the operation. Looks like Hydra Fang is up to something again, Peter muttered under his breath. Hydra Fang, the name sent a chill down his spine. He'd heard whispers of the organization, an elusive crime syndicate involved in everything from arms dealing to genetic experimentation. If they were involved, whatever was happening in New Horizon was far worse than he'd thought. As Peter silently approached, intent on getting closer, his spider sense flared to light. He flipped backward just as a massive figure barreled out from the shadows, slamming into the spot where he'd been standing. Peter's eyes widened. The man in front of him was no ordinary thug. His muscles bulged unnaturally beneath his skin, and his eyes gleamed with an unholy mixture of rage and madness. It's New quipped, launching a web line to a nearby wall and yanking himself out of reach. The man snarled, charging again with frightening speed. Peter barely dodged, feeling the wind from the brute's swing. This guy was faster than he looked, and far too strong. Okay, buddy, let's see what you've got. Free Peter taunted, launching himself at the man with a barrage of kicks and punches, trying to wear him down. But every hit only seemed to make the guy angrier, and Peter quickly realized he wasn't dealing with someone who could be knocked out easily. The fight dragged on, with Peter struggling to outmaneuver the enhanced thug. As the man closed in, Peter prepared to leap away again, but something grabbed him. An arm, green and massive, swooped down from above, yanking him out of harm's way and tossing the thug into the street with bone-shattering force. Peter turned in midair, eyes widening as he saw who had just saved him. Whoa, big guy, what are you doing here? The Hulk, Bruce Banner, or at least the less than peaceful side of him, had joined the fray. Hulk's massive form towered over the criminal who was struggling to get back on his feet. Without waiting for an answer, Hulk lunged, landing a punch that shook the street beneath them. The criminal crumpled, knocked unconscious with a single blow. Peter landed gracefully next to the Hulk, his usual banter on the tip of his tongue, but something about the situation made him pause. Hulk didn't usually show up in cities unless things were bad, really bad. Thanks, Peter offered hesitantly. Hulk grunted, turning away as his massive frame began to shrink, muscle fading into the leaner form of Bruce Banner. Peter's eyes widened again. He had never actually met Banner, but everyone knew who he was. Bruce caught his breath, wiping sweat from his brow. "You were welcome," he muttered, eyes flicking toward the now unconscious thug. "But I think we've got a bigger problem than just this guy." Peter, still adjusting to the strangeness of the situation, blinked. "Yeah, no kidding. Who the heck are these guys?" "They were part of something called Hydra Fang," Bruce said, his voice tight with controlled anger. They found experimenting using gamma radiation and spider DNA, they remaking people like him. Peter stiffened. Spider DNA, his mind raced as he pieced together the information. These guys were creating superhumans like him, except without the responsibility or control. So they were trying to create an army of Hulks and Spider-Men, Peter said, incredulous. Something like that, Bruce replied. But these enhancements aren't T-stable. They're returning people into monsters. Peter's expression darkened, and we have to stop them. Bruce nodded, but his gaze was grim. It's not going to be easy. Hydra Fangsty's leader Victor Caden has deep pockets and plenty of resources. They've been working on this for a while. If we don't stop them soon, they'll spread this serum across the city and then beyond. Peter stared at the unconscious thug, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. So, what's the plan, Doc? Bruce frowned. First, we need to find their main lab. That's where they were producing the serum. Destroy that, and we destroy their operation. Peter's spider sense tingled again, but this time it wasn't taut from danger. It was the sense of something much larger than just another street-level threat. Hydra Fang wasn't just after money or power. They were after control over the very essence of what made someone superhuman. And if they succeeded, they'd unleash an unstoppable force on the world. We need to move fast, Bruce added, his voice low before it scintillated. As the two unlikely allies disappeared into the shadows of New Horizon, the city continued to sleep, unaware of the storm brewing beneath its surface. The Hydrofang laboratory was deep beneath the city, hidden away in a forgotten industrial district that had long since been abandoned. Bruce and Peter had tracked the radiation signatures to the area, but getting inside wasn't going to be easy. The facility was heavily guarded, and every door, every wall was reinforced with high-tech security. Peter perched on a ledge, high above the street, his eyes scanning the perimeter. I've got eyes on at least a dozen guards, he whispered into his communicator. These guys are packing some serious heat. Bruce's voice crackled through the earpiece. We'll have to be careful. They've likely got more than just guns. Hydrofang has been stockpiling experimental tech for years. Peter sighed. Great, just what we needed. But even as he spoke, his mind was working, analyzing the situation. He could take out the guards one by one silently, while Bruce had a less subtle approach between the two of them. They had a shot. Let's do this, Peter said, leaping into action. He moved like a shadow, his web slingers firing in rapid succession as he disarmed and immobilized the guard. One by one, they fell, never knowing what hit them. Within minutes, the outer perimeter was clear, and Peter dropped down beside Bruce, who was watching from a distance. Nice work, Bruce muttered. Now comes the hard part. They approached the entrance to the lab, a massive steel door that looked impenetrable. Bruce pulled out a small device, a portable gamma scanner, and waved it over the door's control panel. Gamma locked, he muttered. They were using my own tech against me. Peter frowned. Can you get us in? Bruce nodded grimly. I designed the lock. I can break it. As Bruce worked on the door, Peter kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. His spider sense tingled, but there was something off about it. The danger wasn't immediate, but it was close, too close for comfort. Suddenly, the door clicked open with a soft hiss. Bruce glanced up, his face hard with determination. Let's go. They slipped inside, the sterile white walls of the lab illuminated by harsh fluorescent light. The hum of machinery filled the air, and Peter's skin crawled as he looked around. This place was wrong. Everything about it screamed danger. Bruce moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the lab for any signs of the serum. But what they found was far worse. Rows of glass chambers lined the walls, each one filled with a figure suspended in green liquid. Some were human, others less so. They were the failed experiments, the twisted results of Hydra Fang's attempts to create their superhuman army. This is what they've been doing, Bruce said quietly, his voice heavy with guilt. This is what they've been using my research for. Peter swallowed hard, his stomach turning at the sight of this twisted display. The people inside the chambers, some of them barely recognizable as human anymore, floated in eerie silence, their bodies deformed by the grotesque combination of gamma radiation and spider DNA. Peter took a step closer to one of the tanks, his face tightening as he saw a young man, maybe no older than he was, twitch slightly inside the liquid. His skin had a sickly green hue, his arms elongated and clawed like some nightmarish version of Peter's own ability. They're alive, Peter whispered, horrified. Not for long if they keep this up, Bruce said, his voice cold. The serum's unstable, it enhances their physical capabilities, but at a cost they breed all on borrowed time. Peter turned to Bruce, a lump forming in his throat. We need to get them out of here. They didn't ask for that. Bruce nodded, though. His eyes were dark with the weight of impossible decision. We will, but first, we have to stop Victor Cannon from making more of them. If we don't, this city said just the beginning. They moved deeper into the lab, passing more rows of experiments, each more monstrous than the last. The air was thick with the faint scent of chemicals and something else, something metallic and wrong. Peter's instincts told him danger was near, but nothing could have prepared him for what they found in the main chamber. Victor Caden stood at the center of the room, his back to them, arms crossed behind him. His dark suit was pristine, his stance calm and confident. Surrounding him were massive vats of the Arachnor serum, their contents glowing with a sickly green light. Caton did turn as Bruce and Peter approached, as if he had been expecting them all along. So, this is where it all leads, Bruce said, his voice low and steady, but filled with anger. You were using my work to create monster. Victor finally turned, a thin smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Monsters, no Dr. Banner, I am creating the next evolution of humanity. Stronger, faster, more resilient. Your research combined with Mr. Parker's unique genetic material has allowed us to achieve something extraordinary. Peter stiffened, stepping forward. You're not evolving humanity. You're turning them into weapons, mindless killers. I've seen what your serum does to people. Victor's smile widened. But you misunderstand, Mr. Parker. They were only mindless if they were weak. The strong, those with true potential, will survive the process. They will become gods. Bruce clenched his fists, the air around him vibrating with the barely contained rage that always simmered beneath the surface. You're replaying with forces. You don't understand the gamma radiation alone. Victor cut him off with a sharp laugh. However, the gamma radiation was the key. Dr. Banner, without your research, this would have been impossible. And now the world will bow to the power I've created. Peter's spider sense flared just as a group of Hydra-Fang soldiers stepped out from the shadows, their bodies hulking and distorted from the serum. They moved with unnatural speed surrounding Bruce and Peter, blocking any escape. This ends now, Caton. Bruce shouted, his voice growing deeper as the Hulk began to take over. His body swelled, muscles ripping through his clothes as the transformation completed in seconds. The Hulk roared, the sound shaking the very walls of the lab. Peter didn't wait. In a blur of motion, he launched himself into the fray, webbing one of the soldiers before he could react, yanking him off his feet. The fight exploded into chaos. The Hulk barreled through the soldiers, each punch sending shockwaves through the room. He was a force of nature, unstoppable and brutal, but the soldiers, enhanced with the same unstable power, were stronger than any normal human. They fought back with ferocity, their movements erratic and unpredictable, driven by the madness that the serum had instilled in them. Peter darted between the combatants, using his agility to stay out of reach, webbing their legs and hands to slow them down, but even he found himself struggling to keep up. The serum had turned these men into something far worse than just thugs. They were almost animalistic in their aggression, lashing out wildly, heedless of the damage they were causing to themselves or their surroundings. Hey, big guy, Peter shouted, swinging past the Hulk and landing a kick to one soldier's face. Very little help here. The Hulk didn't respond with words, only with action. He grabbed two soldiers and slammed their heads together with a sickening crunch. Peter winced, but kept moving, knowing that every second counted. They had to stop Kanan before he unleashed this horror on the rest of the world. Victor Caden stood back, watching the chaos unfold with an almost serene expression. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small vial of the serum, his final card to play. With one swift motion, he injected it into his own arm. Peter's heart sank as Kagan's body began to convulse, his muscles bulging grotesquely as the serum took effect. He let out a guttural growl, his eyes glowing with a sickly green light. His transformation was faster than any of the others, and within moments Caden stood before them, towering and monstrous, his grin twisted with madness. You see, gentlemen, Caden growled, his voice deeper and distorted, I am the future. Without warning, Kane lunged at the Hulk with terrifying speed, catching the massive green giant off guard. The two titans collided with a force that shook the lab, sending equipment flying in all directions. Peter barely had time to react before he was thrown to the ground by the shockwave. The fight between the Hulk and Kaiten was brutal, each blow sending shockwaves through the air. Kane, enhanced by the serum, was nearly as strong as the Hulk, and his newfound speed made him a formidable opponent. But the Hulk was relentless, every hit landing with the force of a freight train. Peter scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. He had to help, but there was no way he could go toe-to-toe with someone like Kaiten. Then his eyes fell on the vats of Arachnor serum, still standing untouched in the corner of the room. If they could destroy the serum, they could stop Kain's army from ever growing. But how? His eyes darted to the ceiling, and an idea formed. Hulk, hold him off. There, he shouted, launching himself upward with a web line. The Hulk responded with a roar, slamming Kain into the ground with a thunderous punch. Peter swung to the top of the lab, using his webbing to attach to the supports holding the vats of serum in place. With a sharp tug, he ripped the supports free, sending the entire structure crashing down. The vats shattered on impact, spilling the glowing green liquid across the floor. Kain roared his monstrous form, twisting in anger as he saw his plans falling apart. The serum spread like a flood, short-circuiting the equipment and causing sparks to fly. Alarms blared as the lab descended into chaos. Kain, now blinded by fury, charged at the Hulk again. But this time, the Hulk was ready. With one final earth-shattering punch, the Hulk sent Kain flying across the room, his body smashing into the far wall with a sickening crack. Kain slumped to the ground, his monstrous form beginning to shrink as the serum in his system destabilized. His last words, choked with rage and regret, echoed through the lab. Tarek, you will never win. Peter landed beside the Hulk, breathing hard as he surveyed the destruction. Tarek, we did it. Try, he said, half in disbelief. The Hulk, still in his monstrous form, looked down at Peter and gave a slow nod. The fight was over. Hydra Fang was finished. As the dust settled, Bruce began to return to his human form, his breaths ragged and tired. It's not over yet, he said quietly. We still have to clean up the mess. Peter nodded, knowing Bruce was right. The serum, the experiments, the people they had seen in the tanks, it was all still there, lingering like a dark shadow over everything they had fought for. But for now, they had stopped the worst of it. They had stopped Hydra Fang from unleashing their nightmare on the world. As they walked out of the ruined lab, the city of New Horizon lay before them, still and quiet in the night. It wasn't safe, not yet, but for the first time in a long while, Peter felt like they had made a difference. They had saved lives. They had stopped a catastrophe. And together, they had proved that even in the face of overwhelming power, the choice to do what was right would always matter more.